All right. All right, everyone. Good morning. Good late morning. Thanks to you all for being here. So if you're just joining us, feel free to put your name and organization in the chat, what part of California you're tuning in from, and share your website, your Instagram handle, show off your work to folks. But also it's a good opportunity to network with folks in your area if they're here or just really across the state. So I'm Christina Harrington. I work for the California Department of Food and Agriculture in the Office of Farm to Fork, and I'm your go-to person for the Farm to Community Food Hubs grant program. So this is our third or fourth, I'm losing track now, session of application office hours. So the purpose of today is I will present for the next 10-ish minutes or so, just to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of eligibility and the purpose of the program. But then really the lion's share, the majority of today is meant to respond to your questions. So when that time comes, you will be able to raise your hand and ask to be unmuted to ask a question verbally, or you can write things into the chat and I'll bounce back and forth between raised hands and the chat messages. But if you can't stay on for the full time or I don't have time to get to your question in the chat, please, please, please email it to me. And the email address is on the screen right now, cafoodhubs@cdfa.ca.gov. So it's me on the other end, and I will respond to those as soon as possible. So we have a tiny bit less than 2 weeks until the application is due on Monday, April 14th by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you haven't opened up those application materials yet and started brainstorming and writing in there, do it right now while we're on the call, and that you go through it, and you might have questions as you move through it too. All right. So if you didn't hear the announcement, the Zoom announcement, we are recording this meeting and it will be posted on our website in a couple days. We've had several other application office hour sessions already, and those recordings are on our website as well if you want to check those out. So like I mentioned, today we're going to go over real quick the support we've been offering applicants. I know a lot of you have been using those services already, which is great. The purpose of the program, who's eligible to apply, and then we'll look at the grant website together where you'll find all the application materials and other information, so you know where to find it after today. And like I mentioned, I'm going to try to respond to as many questions I can that you all have for me today, but I can't really answer how best to do your proposed project, mostly because you all know your capacity and your needs and your priorities better. But I'm really well qualified to answer questions around alignment with the grant program, the grant rules, scoring criteria, and things like that. So we've been offering multiple support avenues for applicants since February when we launched this grant program. So you can always send us an email. The email address again is on the website. We have frequently asked questions on our website that I've been updating every week or two. And we just will have a new one coming up in a couple days, I believe, on the website. And then we've been hosting the office hours, which you're here today. And our last office hours session will be on April 10th at 12 p.m. If you want to come to that, you're more than welcome to. The last layer of support we've been offering applicants is reviewing draft application materials for up to 20 lead applicants that identify as either a Native American tribe, tribal-led nonprofit, or a food producer organization that's majority owned by socially disadvantaged, beginning, limited resource veteran, or disabled food producers. So I think at this point, my calendar is almost completely full since I've been working with several applicants, but they have been able to sign up with me through our online form or just give me a call on my cell phone there to find a time. And the other resources we have are we did a information session back in February, and that was more of a deep dive into the grant rules, priorities, scoring. And so that recording and slide deck has been on our website. Today is more of really just trying to respond to your questions. Of course, the request for application, which is the document that goes over all the details of this grant program, rules, regulations, etc. So that document is a really great resource to look at, control F to find something specific if that's what you're looking for. And in that document on page 3, there's a little section, tips for applicants. That might be particularly helpful for folks who have not applied to a grant before, or maybe it's only their second or third time applying to a grant. And then on our website, we also have the application submission checklist, which is really a guide, a tool to help applicants track what materials they need to submit as part of their full application. So if you're track 1, it'll tell you submit X, Y, and Z. If you're track 2, it'll tell you submit A, B, C, D, E. And we'll look at this on the grant website together soon. But before we do, we're going to just all ground ourselves again in the purpose of this program. And I always say this is the North Star for the program, meaning in one way or another, the project selected for award should help feed into and achieve the goals on this slide. So the purpose is to incentivize the creation and permanency of public serving aggregation and distribution enterprises by investing in planning activities and piloting investments in the capital aggregation and distribution infrastructure that's needed to increase purchasing of local environmentally sustainable, climate smart, and equitably produced food by schools and other institutions, to build a better food system economy, to support the local farming and indigenous food production economies, to accelerate climate adaptation and resilience, and to employ food system workers with fair wages and working conditions. And I have been pointing out that first bullet point to folks as well because we're looking for projects that help increase purchasing of the local, sustainable, and equitably produced food by schools and other institutions. So by and large, with some specific exceptions, direct-to-consumer sales are not allowed for this program, and donating food is not allowed for this program. And then what is a community food hub? What kind of, enterprises or nonprofit projects are we trying to fund? If your project or your organization aligns with this definition on the slide, you would likely qualify as a community food hub for this program. So a community food hub is an organization or business that serves as a supply chain intermediary by purchasing food products from and providing aggregation, distribution, or marketing services from multiple local or regional California food producers, especially those using sustainable or climate smart practices and following state labor practices. The Food Hub provides these services to strengthen the ability of its food producers to reach sales markets with wholesale, retail, or institutional buyers and identifies the source of 100% of the food products that it sells. And folks who are eligible to apply, the next slide will go into the specific legal entities that are eligible to apply as lead applicants. Generally, most types of entities are allowed to apply to either track 1 or track 2, as long as they're developing a new community food hub or expanding the capacity of a developed community food hub. And how we've defined those terms are the following. A new community food hub is an entity that has either never conducted operations or has been conducting food hub operations and had an average annual gross income of $1 million or less during the last 3 years. By contrast, a developed community food hub is one that had an average annual gross income between $1.1 million and $5 million the last 3 years. So specifically, the legal entities that are allowed to apply are listed under the green check mark, and then, which I won't read for the sake of time, but those under the red X are not eligible to apply as lead applicants. So that includes individuals, private schools, other local, state, and federal entities, and food hubs, aggregators, and distributors that do not meet the definitions of community food hub or developed community food hub. And because of how we've defined developed community food hub, that would mean if a food hub had an average annual gross income greater than $5 million the last 3 years, they are not eligible to apply to the program. So how do we apply? So again, applications are due 5 p.m. on Monday, April 14th. The way that you apply is by attaching all of the required application materials to an email and sending that into our inbox at cafoodhubs@cdfa.ca.gov. And you can find all the application materials on our website. We'll look at it together in a moment. And again, my hot tip is to use that application submission checklist so you can just clearly track what you need to submit, what you've completed, what you have left to go, because I know it can be a lot of moving parts. All right, so looking at the website together. So this is our website, the main page. I'll drop it in the chat if you need to navigate there. So this is our website. You do a quick overview of the program, which we just talked about. When you scroll down, it'll remind you how to apply, submitting all completed and required materials by emailing them as attachments to our email inbox. So here's that submission checklist I mentioned, my hot tip, that's where you can access it. Here's the request for application, the 30+ page document with all the rules and details about this grant program. Again, the submission checklist. Our frequently asked questions are here as well. And again, I update them every couple of weeks or so. So there should be an update in the next couple of days or so. And then if you are applying to Track 1 Planning, this is where you will find all the application materials. You click this green bar and it drops down here. So you find the application questions template, the work plan template, the project budget template, and the letter of support template. The review criteria and scoring is nothing that you need to complete. This is a PDF that shows you all the details of how exactly every section of your application will be scored by reviewers. And then if you're applying to Track 2, Infrastructure and Operations, this is where you'll find your information. So you click this green bar, it drops down to all the application materials. So here's the Track 2 application questions. Also, the review criteria for Track 2 is here. Here's your Track 2 work plan, your budget, the food producer network list that you need to create, the food producer verification forms that are both in English and in Spanish, and then the letter of support form that all Track 2 applicants need to use for this application. And then when you scroll down, here's everything for our application assistance. Again, our FAQs are here. The information session I mentioned earlier, the slide deck and the recording, this was the more of the deep dive that we did back in February. So you can look at that later on if you like. Of course, our application office hours. So if you want to come to April 10th, you register here. And then for folks that have requested feedback on their drafts, this is all the information about that and how they can request time with me. Again, my schedule is very, very full. It's possible some people cancel here and there, and there's an opening that comes up. But if you want to see what my availability looks like, you can go to this online form. It's attached directly to my calendar, and you can request a time. If you don't see anything, you can give me a call or email our inbox and see if there's something that is open that might not be showing. But again, the folks that qualify for the feedback on drafts are only, remind us right here, who can request this assistance. California Native American tribes, both federally and non-federally recognized, tribal-led nonprofits, which we define right there, and then food producer businesses and organizations, majority owned by socially disadvantaged, beginning, limited resource, veteran, and disabled food producers. All right. So that was the end of my spiel. Thank you all for being so patient. So now if you want to ask a verbal question, you can go and raise your hand using the Zoom function. And then I'll also go in the chat and see if there's any questions in there, and I'll try to bounce back and forth. Um, and we'll get started. All right. All right, everyone's introducing themselves. Love it. Hey, Angela, glad you're here. All right. Let's see. We got Jed and Timothy raising hands. I'll do one from chat and then we'll go to raised hands. All right, Laura. Do these farmers with disadvantaged as tribal veterans disabled, do they have to get certifications of their status? Great question. No, we don't ask for any kind of external certification of your farmers who might be involved in your project. What we ask of for track 2 is we ask, I'm going to pull up the actual document so we all can see it together. So for track 2, we're asking you to create your food producer network list. That's where you input the producers you'll be directly serving and who'll be supplying your food hub during the project term. And then we ask you to, I'm pulling it up right now. We ask you for then 10 of that list, 10 of the food producers to sign food producer verification forms, this is the English version. So you're the applicant, if you're the lead applicant, you fill out section 1, and then your food producer is the one who will fill out section 2. So they put their business or organization name, first and last name, the county where they operate, and then they say yes or no. Are they interested in selling their food products to the food hub? The purpose is to see that yes, they are. But then they essentially self report whether or not they are they identify as at least one of these categories. If they use sustainable, climate smart, or regenerative practices, if they operate on 500 acres or less, if 50% or more of the owners identify as at least one of the following. So this is them saying yes or no for themselves. We're not looking for any external certification for that. And same with limited resource food producer, they say yes or no, beginning, cooperatively owned, veteran, or person with a disability. And then they have to sign at the bottom. That's super, super important. Letters of support and these food producer verification forms. If there's not a signature at the bottom, whether it's handwritten or digital signature using DocuSign or something like that, you need to have a signature for this to count. If there's no signature, it won't be able to count towards your points, unfortunately, because that's really the only way to verify the legitimacy of these things. Great question. Okay, I'm going to go to Jed, and then I'm going to go to the chat.
Hello. So basically just the same question that I asked in chat. We're dealing with a product that has no established producers. We're Acorn. It's been eaten forever. It's particularly important to tribal communities. There are no producers of Acorn on your list of producers. We've got a lot of people who own land and would like us to harvest Acorn from their land, or who want to harvest it and sell it to us. So we have a whole bunch of producers and they meet the criteria, but they're not on your list of producers. And the grant applications make it sound like we need a certain number of people who are on your list of previously approved producers, which is obviously impossible. Is this a problem?
Great question. So I've gotten this question recently. So Jed is referring to track 2, right, Jed? Okay. And let me unmute you again, just because, unless you have a lot of background noise, but just in case you want to say stuff. So for track 2, we ask you, I'm going to pull it up. We ask the applicant to create a food producer network list. You do not need to look at any external bodies list of producers. You don't need to look at CDFAs or a county, nothing like that. You, the applicant, are creating your own food producer network list that I'll show you in a second what it looks like on that website. Because essentially you're telling us, CDFA, who is in your network of producers, who you are going to be sourcing food from, whether that's folks in Judd's case using traditional practices harvesting acorns, or for other folks who might be working with more traditional farms and ranches. So this is what the food producer network list looks like that's on our website for track 2. The instructions go into the details, note on data privacy, because everything you submit to CDFA is subject to public records request. So these are just fake things I made in italics. So you would remove these examples, and you type in your own food producers that you anticipate to be working with during their track 2 grant term, which is 60 months. We know that can be difficult to estimate. That's a long time, 5 years. We know it fluctuates annually, seasonally, for lots of reasons. That's okay. You're doing your best effort to estimate and let us know who you would be working with as part of the project. And next to each food producer's organization or business name, maybe it's an individual, Jed, in your case, you'd put what county they're operating in and where they're harvesting from, where they're producing food. And then in the orange, you then say yes or no for all these categories. Is that food producer majority owned by a socially disadvantaged food producer? You don't have to answer these questions. They're not scored, but it's extra info for us. But definitely answer if they're socially disadvantaged or not. Are they owned by a limited resource food producer? Are they operating on 500 acres or less? Are they a beginning food producer? Are they cooperatively owned, veteran owned by a person with a disability? Are they using environmentally sustainable, climate smart, or regenerative agricultural practices? In your case, Jed, if you're working with, well, I don't know, I guess I assumed if you're working with tribal members or Native American folks, then we have in our definition in the RFA, we do mention that tribal members and Native American folks that are using their traditional methods would be also considered a sustainable or regenerative practice. So yeah, so the applicants for track 2, you create the network list. You don't need to have it match any external list that might be out there from CDFA or otherwise. So this is something you're creating and then submitting to us as part of your application. And then of your list of producers, you need to ask ideally 10 of them to be the ones to fill out and sign that food producer verification form that we looked at a little bit ago. So anyone that's signing your food producer verification form should also be included on this network list. We want to make sure that they're matching in that sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
I have one follow-up question. On that form, there's a
Please.
bunch of questions about the identity of the producer, and then a column asking if they're cooperatively owned. The intention is to set up a producers cooperative. But if something is cooperatively owned, then with multiple owners, it becomes very difficult to fill out identity-based columns on which sort of assume implicitly that there's one owner. We run into this also with our organization because we're cooperatively owned. And I'm a white guy, but I'm not the only person in the cooperative, and not everybody else is a white guy, obviously. So do you have any recommendations there?
Yeah, here we go. So in the instructions, the fine print, this is still the food producer network list. So in the instructions for number 3, select yes or no for whether they identifies the categories in the columns in orange. Note on ownership, 50% or more of the owners of the food producer organization identifies one of the groups. So that's what you would look at. 50% or more of those owners identifies as socially disadvantaged, veteran, persons with disabilities, etc.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Jed. Great questions. All right, I'm gonna go to chat as promised, and then I'll go to Timothy next. Okay, that was your question, Jed. Jean, can you go more in depth on what defines a producer-led community food hub? Would it be acceptable to establish an advisory board to engage producers in managing and decision-making for the food hub? That is a great question. So we do define producer-led community food hub in the RFA, which I'm pulling up right now. So we do not, there we go. We do not dictate what it looks like. That's up to the applicant to let us know what your approach is going to be for both track 1 and track 2. This is you'll explain that in the application questions. But the definition is a food hub in which California food producers, including those who use indigenous food production practices, because we do consider those folks as food producers, they are the owners, operators, and or decision makers. They have decision-making roles that directly affect the planning, design, or operations of the community food hub. And we just note that these food hubs could be using any form of legal business structure, whether it's a cooperative or not. And additional points would be given to applications that demonstrate the project is a producer-led community food hub. So how exactly it looks is really dependent on what your approach is to your food hub project. Yeah, great question. Okay, I promised I'd go to Timothy. So right, Timothy, I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
Hi there. Thanks for hosting. I had a quick question, and sorry if this is redundant, but I'm curious in the letter of support form for track 2. I'm used to letters of support being more paragraph form, and is this kind of like everybody's going to answer, or section 1 will be filled out by us, kind of more bullet point situation, and then for the buyers, are they only answering section 3, like just kind of skipping section 2 and going straight to section 3, and then the other 2 categories are only doing section 2?
Great question. I will
Thank you.
pull it up. Yeah, of course. Okay. Make sure I have the right page. All right. So just so we all know what we're talking about, what it looks like. So this is the track 2 letter of support form. All track 2 applicants should use this form. And have your folks sign and fill this out. So just as you said, Timothy, section 1, the lead grant applicant is the one that fills this out, your legal entity name, your project title, and then let us know. The person that's going to be signing this form, the person in support of your project, what category do they relate to? Are they a buyer, business economic development supporter, community supporter, or other? These 3 categories are what the application says you need to submit. That you need to submit 2 letters of support forms from buyers that are public institutions or nonprofits, 1 from a business economic development supporter, and 3 from community supporters. So if they're the buyer, they would need to submit complete sections 2 and 3. So they'd fill out their basic information, what kind of entity they are, briefly describe their organization, why they support the project, how they'll support the project. This doesn't need to be, long-winded or anything like that. We just want to get a sense of why and how. And then if they're the buyer, section 3, do they intend on purchasing products from the food hub? Yes or no? We're looking for a yes. There is this note, it's not an enforceable commitment. So you don't need a contract with a buyer, you don't need an MOU. This is not a binding agreement, because I know some buyers might feel a little wary of signing something like this, or Food Hub might feel wary about signing it, but this is not a commitment. And then they would describe how they intend to use the food products. If they're a public school, are they using it to prepare their school meals? If they're a nonprofit that serves low-income communities, are they going to donate it to folks in their community? Just to get a sense of how they would use the food. And then everyone that fills out this letter of support form needs to sign. Again, these signatures are really key, very important to have the signature. Yeah. Does that help, Timothy? The buyers need to fill out sections 2 and 3. Yeah. Okay. Looking in chat. Here we go. Let me make sure I didn't skip anyone. Okay, we've talked to Jean. Okay, Brittany, as the community food hub, do we have to purchase the food from the farm? We work with a local organization who we let use the land. Will that impact our participation? Is the donation only an issue for families or for both? Excuse me. So donations are not allowed at all. The lead applicant and grant recipient cannot donate anything to other entities, and that would include food. So you wouldn't be able to use grant funds to help with donating food. If your organization does that on the side, kind of unrelated to this grant project, that's totally fine. It's just that the grant funds can't be used to support donations. And then, do we have to purchase food from the farm? So, yeah, every food hub operation is a little different. Some Yeah, so how exactly you handle the food is kind of up to what works for you and your producers. You don't have to directly purchase it. Like essentially, we want the food hub to be the pass-through entity between the buyers and the farmers, right? So the food hub is handling the sales and the transactions, or that intermediary between the buyers and the farmers. So the kind of technicalities of how that works is what is best suited for your operation. But you're asking also, we work with the local organization who we let use the land. So I guess I need more clarity around that. Would that be land that your food hub is operating on? Or is that something else? I don't know if you want to raise your hand or add more. You can elaborate. Okay. Let me see. Do you want to be unmuted, Brittany? Let's see. Here we go. Yes. You should be
Hi,
able to.
thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
so I can elaborate. So we are on a small island and we work with an organization that does indigenous and urban farming on the island already. So we have some land that we're going to let them use to expand this urban garden and also add some small agriculture like some chickens and a coop to utilize it. So typically we weren't purchasing, we were just allowing them to use the land for free. But with this grant, we know that there's a qualification that they would have to purchase. So we're trying to figure out exactly, is it the families that must purchase it, but we must also purchase the food as the community food hub. But it sounds like as long as we have an arrangement, it's just the families. I think that's the part we're trying to figure out.
Got it. Yeah, so this grant, with some specific exceptions, won't allow for direct-to-consumer sales. So the food hub wouldn't be able to sell food directly to families
Okay.
or to individuals. Again, with some very specific exceptions. One example is a lot of food is medicine programs. Food hubs will deliver the food directly to people's homes, for example, but there is a hospital or a healthcare plan that is paying the food hub to do that work as part of the kind of like the medical plan for those clients. So in that case, that sort of operation or model is fine because you have a health clinic or a healthcare plan, the one paying the hub to essentially the one paying the invoices. So we're looking at who's going to pay the invoice. But if an individual is purchasing food from y'all, that wouldn't be allowed. And yeah, if you already have land and that's where your hub is going to operate and you happen to have a producer on there, that's okay. What we would, if your budget includes rental payments for that land, for example,
Mhm.
we would only cover the portion that is directly for the food hub operation.
Okay. Okay, I think that helps. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Great question. Thanks, Brittany. All right. I'll do one more in chat because I know there's a lot in here. Okay. Laura. And actually you raised your hand, so let me just unmute you. That makes more sense. All right. Okay. Go ahead.
Hello. Sorry,
Hi.
horrible lighting. Yeah, I had like 3 questions which are sort of related, just specifically about sections of the application. The one that I put in the chat is about the expectation of the ways that the food hub will support the producers beyond purchasing. And I'm wondering if those examples I put in there, like packaging services, marketing, e-commerce, helping with crop planning, and transportation logistics, like food hub activities, is that sufficient, or do we need to also be doing things like helping them with well drilling or like compliance on their farm site?
Right. Yeah, great question. I'm pulling up the scoring criteria. So for anyone that's might not be familiar with the section Laura is asking about, it's in the track 2 application.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna pull up the scoring criteria, which is on our website. Everyone can look at this right now if they wanted. So this is the section Laura is talking about. Part C, beyond sales. How will the community food hub serve food producers beyond purchasing and selling? Please clearly describe other approaches and activities for supporting food producers in its network. And then there's some examples of what that could look like. But yeah, it's up to you what you want to do. And maybe you're already doing things and you're gonna keep supporting that work. But I'm pulling this up because this is what reviewers are going to look at and how they will score your response so that it's very clearly describing the approach and activities, includes thoughtful ideas that very clearly meet the needs of the food producers. So that would be the maximum points for the section 5. So they're not looking for, they're helping with well drilling. They're not looking for specific things. You know, because every context is going to be totally different. Your food producers are going to have different needs. Your capacity will be different, right? But we're looking for a clear description of your approach and the activities, thoughtfulness, and meeting the needs of your food producers.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And
Yeah.
then I have one other sort of like 2-part question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So we're just trying to sort of assess the overall like robustness of our application. We're currently are a food hub. We qualify as a new food hub, and we've been purchasing from Central Valley farmers and selling that food partially to food banks in the East Bay and partially to corner stores through, we're like working with corner stores to create produce departments. So would a project of taking the base of what we have as our new food hub, but trying to branch into doing even more hyper localized sourcing, like sourcing from urban farms and bringing them into, we're trying to partner with OUSD, with the Oakland School District. Would this be considered? Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if yeah, how much above and beyond our current activities do we need to be trying to aim for in this 5-year period?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I mean, I always point folks back to the scoring criteria, because at this point, that is really what reviewers are going to be using to score each portion. And we don't score directly based on seeing growth per se. Yeah. So a lot of it, when you look through the scoring criteria, a lot of it is around clarity, thoughtfulness, creativity. When it comes to financial sustainability, around kind of like feasibility, you know, you've clearly thought about the financial planning aspects, and there's confidence that it's there was planning that went into that piece, that you understand the needs of producers and buyers. And this is all for track 2, for everyone else that's listening. So yeah, so it just depends on what your goals are
Yeah.
really for your this specific project.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
guess like I'm feeling just sort of caught up in the like project need section where it seems to be asking what is the need, but then sort of retroactively looking at what have you already done and what are the activities you've already accomplished to fulfill this need. But part of the need that we're trying to address is like a new need. And I'm like, that things that we're trying to branch into, do they belong in this part of the narrative? Because they didn't
Gotcha.
happen yet.
Yes, I see what you're saying, and I can see why that would be kind of confusing. I'm gonna go to that section so we can all look at it together. I think this is the right document. Yeah. Oh, so this is the project, or sorry, track 2 application questions. Again, if you haven't opened up these documents yet, do it now. Start looking through and bullet pointing and drafting your responses. But this question is actually the same for track 1 as well. So describe the outcomes of any plans, work, community engagement, or business activities accomplished by the applicant that demonstrates why the project is needed and the project need is significant. So yeah, it's not so much that here's the need and here's how you already met it. I mean, you kind of probably have as a existing food hub in many ways, I assume, but yeah, it's looking at like what's kind of the outcomes or lessons learned your organization has done already. Maybe that's through your operations as a hub. You've probably learned a lot, having worked with producers and buyers, that lets you all know, and therefore CDFA know, that this project that you're proposing for funding for is really needed, to support the producers, the buyers, your food system, and that need is significant. So we're not looking to see that, oh, you've already met the need, per
But it
se. Like
it does
that's
say
part of
that
the
on
project.
the next part down there, it says for each activity described, include when it took place and which organization conducted the activity.
Yeah, so for example, if someone has, if they did a lot of community engagement, in some scenarios, people have done, some counties have done food assessments, and some organizations were involved in that. And those assessments showed them, oh, a food hub is really needed. So that could be an example of like, yeah, we participated in this engagement, in this study process in 2021, whatever it was, and that indicated to us a food hub is really needed and this is why, that kind of thing. So it's more like, what have you done to date? And in your case, maybe it's the operations you've been doing. Maybe you've been seeing a need with your buyers or your growers, or your own operation perhaps needing to scale for some reason. And that has shown you, yeah, we do need this funding to implement the project we're proposing right now.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
I'm glad. Yeah, I could see why that's confusing. So great question. Was there another part to your question, Laura?
No, that was pretty much covering it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna go to chat, and then I will go to Maeda. Oh, Maeda, you were the next one in chat. So let me unmute you. Okay. You should be able to speak. Are you there, Maeda? We don't hear you. There might be something wrong with your mic. I'm still not hearing you if you're talking, but I did see your message in chat. So you said you were with the Open Arms Food Pantry and Resource Center. We're attempting to determine the correct track for our program. So yeah, it really depends on your organization's goals. Track 1 planning is really focused on the planning activities that are needed for an organization to either plan for a brand new food hub, never having existed or operated, or if it has been operating, to invest in expanding it somehow, or invest in, it might look like marketing strategies. Maybe you want to create a business plan. Maybe you want to do a full-blown feasibility study. It really depends on your goals as an organization. But that's what track 1 is for, really just the planning side. And then track 2, infrastructure and operations, is really the implementation side. Either you're implementing a brand new food hub, or you're already a food hub and you want to support your operating costs or get new equipment or infrastructure that's needed for your project. So if you're at a planning phase, trying to figure out how to do something, need some capacity to do some research or some engagement with producers or buyers, something like that, track 1 might be the best fit. If you're looking to buy infrastructure and equipment because you are conducting sales to institutions, track 2 might be the better fit. So hopefully that helps. I'm sorry, I still can't hear you, Maeda, but you might want to look at, there's a little microphone icon on Zoom usually, and then like a little upward caret arrow. And when you click that upward arrow, usually you can select a different microphone. So it might be, you might play with that around a little bit, and that might help. Okay. I'm gonna go back to chat. Let's see, there's already networking happening. Love it. Meredith, for the track 2 budget template, would labor costs be shaped over the duration of the project timeline, or should costs be averaged across the project duration? Excuse me, great question. So track 2 is 60-month grant term, and everyone in track 2 will have a 60-month grant term. So you should estimate labor costs as you anticipate they will be over that whole 5-year term. And I know there's not columns for year by year. So you could estimate that what the cost would be for the full term for your personnel, and put that amount in there. And then in the purpose and justification, you could explain how you came to that number. You could, write out the year breakdown in the cost section if you really wanted to, too. That's fine too, if you want reviewers to have a clear sense of how you got to that number. But yeah, I wouldn't, you could average, but that's probably not going to be as accurate if you're able to think about it year by year. All right. We got, who's top of my list? We got Brittany here now. Ask you to unmute, and then Joel, you'll be next.
Oh, wait, sorry. No, I'm okay. Oh, you answered my question. I forgot to lower my hand. I apologize.
Okay, no worries. All right, Joel, it is you. Go for it.
Good morning, Christina. Thanks for pulling this together. My first, hopefully, quick question is the RFA notes an indirect rate cap of 30%, but also has a clause for CSU applicants to use the approved and established indirect rates. Just wanted to confirm under that clause if the indirect rate is still capped at 30%, if the established rate is higher than that for CSU.
I don't know offhand. I'd have to go look through our grant documents. But I'm pretty sure it's different than 30. That doesn't tell you more or less. Yeah, if you could send me an email just so I don't forget
Sure.
to respond to you, I'll look at our
Okay.
grant documents and get back to you on that.
Perfect. And then the other question was in terms of scoring, and you kind of spoke to it a little bit with Laura, scoring an application's financial sustainability. We noted the evaluation questions, so that was helpful to see on the evaluation, but wondering if there are specific benchmarks in terms of financial sustainability that are being used for that.
Great question. All right, so I'm gonna pull up the scoring criteria. So the short answer is no. What reviewers will look for is what's in the published criteria. So looking for quantification, clearly showcasing the financial outlook, clearly demonstrating thoughtful and reasonable planning, such as clear investment and robust pre-planning, reasonable sales goals with a clear, thoughtful, feasible plan to achieve them, creative, feasible strategies to achieve stated goals, etc. Those are just examples. And then high confidence in applicants' planning. So not looking for specific benchmarks. Every context is really different and everyone's at a different scale. So yeah, just depends. Great question. Okay. All right, then we have 8 more minutes. So again, if I don't have time to get to your question, please email it to me at cafoodhubs@cdfa.ca.gov. It's in the chat there again. All right, looking in chat, and then we'll go to Mayetta again with some hope that the microphone's working. Okay, we answered that. Okay, Chelsea, is there a way to add columns to the food producer Excel document? It appears to be locked. It is locked, yeah. It's meant to just be a template. Yeah, you just fill in and answer those questions or prompts that are there, listing your food producers, organization or business name, what county they operate in, and yes or no if they're socially disadvantaged, using sustainable practices, etc. What we looked at earlier. And then again, I'll show, unless there is something specific. Okay, Mary Jane, I'll answer that. I think this is the right one. Oh, it's evaluation. Here we go, network list. Yeah, so hopefully, there's no real need to add additional columns. So something I believe we noted in the instructions, here we go, just in case this is what you're thinking about, is for each number 2, for each food producer, choose which county the food producer operates in. If the food producer operates in multiple counties, write in the county or counties you expect to source the food from. So you could type in multiple county names if there's multiple that you would be sourcing from. Maybe that's why you wanted an extra column, but yeah, other than that, you won't adding additional information versus what's asked here won't support scoring. All right, Mayetta, let's see. Fingers crossed. It's gonna work this time. All right, you should be able to unmute. I still don't hear you if you're talking. Yeah, I still don't hear you. Are you able to type it in the chat at all? Because that might be the better way to address your question. I'm looking to see if you had it in here. Oh, here we go. You got disconnected. Can we try to unmute? Yeah, your microphone isn't working. But I don't know if you heard me before. The Zoom has a microphone icon, usually the bottom left, and it has a little upward arrow right next to it. And when you click that, you should have options for what microphone to select. So sometimes you could just try selecting a different one and see if that works and helps. That might be the issue. All right. Okay, I can look in chat. Okay, Laura, we talked about that. Okay, Linda. Would a small family farm that has moved into value-added items be allowed to apply. We plan on selling produce or value-added items to local markets, a regional food hub, local senior lunch programs, and local school districts. Yeah, great question. So the program is meant to fund either the planning that's necessary or implementation, like infrastructure and equipment and operating costs for a food hub. So not to support a farm's production or a single farm's development of value-added products. I'll share again our definition of food hub. So we defined food hub as an organization or business that serves as a supply chain intermediary by purchasing products, food products from and providing aggregation, distribution, or marketing services for multiple local food producers. So it's not that it would support your farm directly for creating those products and selling to schools, but it'd be if your organization was aggregating products from multiple producers and then working to market and distribute those and sell those products to public institutions and nonprofits like public schools and nonprofits like food banks or other nonprofits serving low-income communities. Yeah. And then kind of the second part of this definition is the food hub is providing these services to strengthen the ability of the food producers to reach sales markets with wholesale, retail, or institutional buyers and identifies the source of 100% of the food products that it sells. Hopefully that helps clarify. All right, I have another one. We have a unified school district interested in buying fresh produce from our future food hub if grant is granted, but they won't sign any contract yet until the fresh produce is happening. Is it possible to submit on board as provider to unified school district to be a potential bidder? Yeah, definitely, Laura. So for track 2 applicants, the letter of support form that you need to use, which I'm going to show again. So we all looking at the same thing. So this is the letter of support form that all track 2 applicants should use. Again, and in the application explains the details I'm about to share. 2 of these letter of support forms need to be from buyers that are either a public institution or a nonprofit. And to answer your question directly, if it's the buyer, they would fill out section 2 and section 3. And in here it says, are they intending to purchase products from the food hub? In your case, the future food hub, if you're awarded. And the note is this is not an enforceable commitment. So this is not a contract. It's not implying there would be a contract. It's essentially to get a sense that there is actually interest from buyers in your area. So they would say yes or no. We're looking for a yes. And then they would describe briefly how they intend to use the food. So if they're a public school district, maybe they're preparing school meals with the food. If they're a food bank, maybe they're donating the food or providing it to their other partners. It just depends on who your buyer is. And then they need to sign at the very bottom. Okay. Maeda, you're still unmuted, so if the mic works, then we should hear you, but I don't hear you still. All right, scheduling an individual appointment with me. Yeah, so 101s are reserved for California Native American tribes, tribal-led nonprofits, and then food producer organizations that are majority owned by socially disadvantaged, veteran, disabled, or beginning food producers. So if you qualify as that, you could request a one-on-one I did say at the beginning, my schedule is very, very full now. So there might, excuse me, there might not be any spots left. But I will share the website so you can see where you find all the information. So this is our website. You scroll to the bottom or down rather, and then under application assistance, there's this green bar, request feedback. And it just gives you all the details about how this works and who can request the assistance as a reminder, and then how. So you can go to the form to see my availability, or you can give me a call. That's my cell phone. So here's the form. I'll drop it in the chat. All right. You all are so, so welcome. Okay, to go to another meeting. Thanks for coming. Okay, Linda, would one other farm, 2 farms altogether qualify? Could it be accomplished as doing business as? Yeah, you can definitely make a DBA. Folks apply under DBAs all the time. If you have that. So yeah, so there are some farmers that they are acting as a food hub. They're actively farming, growing their own food, and at the same time, they are providing this intermediary like function where they're aggregating food from other farmers in their area and working to distribute and sell that food to buyers. So that does happen in various parts. So as long as you are functioning as that intermediary where you're essentially helping conduct sales and market products on behalf of other farmers in addition to your own, presumably, then that's fine. That would qualify. But the lead applicant for track 2 needs to be the entity that will be conducting day-to-day operations of the food hub. So I mean, I suppose you could apply with another farmer if it depends on your model and like specific situation essentially. So you can always send me an email and, explain the situation or ask any specific questions around that. That might be helpful. All right, Maeda, let's see. I think it might be working. Let's see. Okay. You should be able to unmute. Oh no, I still don't hear you. Yeah, I don't even see your microphone kind of showing that audio is getting through. I'm sorry. Just be sure you send me an email. And I can follow up with you. Mary Jane, if I'm fully booked, is there anyone else who we can schedule an appointment with for assistance? Not from, I'm the only person with this. Oh, cute baby. I'm not so cute. Distracted by cuteness. I'm the only one for the Farm to Community Food Hub program, so there's not anyone else in my program that could help. But if you want to send me an email, Mary, yeah, send me an email and I'll see what we can do. If it's not my schedule, then maybe there's something else. Yes, my phone number is, I do try to call people back in a timely manner, but it is very busy the last couple weeks. Meeting with folks and looking at the email inbox. So I might not be able to get back to you right away. But you can also text that number. And email, honestly, is probably the best way to reach me because I'm on the inbox a lot. Okay. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions, and we are at 12:05. So I'm going to end the meeting today. But again, if you all want to come to April 10th, that's our last application office hours because the application then is due the following Monday on April 14th. So feel free to register. I'm going to put it in the chat for April 10th if you want to come to that as well. And we'll see you there. Thank you all for coming and for your great questions.